Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing one product in two ways, and these projects feature brand new products from Pinkfresh Studio. These are like nothing I have ever seen from Pinkfresh Studio before, and I'm so excited about this release. Look at this ice cream truck stamps, dies, and coordinating stencil set. You can see it creates this adorable ice cream truck, that little bear with the ice cream cones, and there's so many ways that you can use this. I'm going to use it for a shaker card today. Now, also in this release is the new Petal Grid press plate. Keep in mind, press plates can be used with your Better Press system or with your Glimmer Hot Foil system or to make an impression. It also coordinates with the new Starry Scallop die, which is so much fun. Now, I'm going to start by stamping and stenciling my images, and because I want to get this generally in the right spot, since this is a one-piece die situation, I'm going to lay down my stencil, place my stamp inside the stencil as best I can line it up, and then I'm going to ink up this little stamp with some dough ink. Now, I'm going to stamp this onto some white cardstock. This is some Concord and Ninth white cardstock. It's my favorite for ink blending and for foiling. And once I get that stamped, I decided it wasn't quite dark enough. So I grabbed gathered twigs instead, and I'm inking up the stamp and stamping it right back in the same position. Because I'm using a stamp positioning tool like the Misty, that makes this really easy. Once my image is stamped, I'm going to transfer my cardstock over to my grip mat, and I'm going to place stencil number 1 in place. Because I'm using a piece of cardstock that's larger than my stencil, I have some magnets that I am using to hold my stencil in place while I do my ink blending. And I'm going to start with the body of my ice cream truck, and I'm blending over the entire area using Ballet Slipper ink and the 1-inch blending brush from Pinkfresh Studio. These brushes are absolutely wonderful for putting down soft blends of ink. Now I'm going to come in with some coral reef ink around the edges and kind of darken up the edges and add a little bit of shading. You'll notice that I'm covering my little bear and those ice cream images that are off over to the left with just a scrap piece of cardstock while I do the blending on my ice cream truck, and that just means I can go a little faster on that area. Now I'm going to switch over to the 1/2-inch blending brushes, so I have a little more control over where I'm placing my ink, and I'm using peony ink for my ice creams on this. Then I am going to bring in warm buff ink and again a 1/2-inch blending brush and blend over my bear. Now you could do a lot of different things with this bear. I'm just keeping him simple with some light brown tones today. You'll notice that I am wiping off my stencil between each color to avoid kind of getting one color into the next. And I'm making sure that I use those smaller blending brushes so I have control over where I'm placing my ink. Now for the tires on my ice cream truck, I used Rocky Slope, and I'm using Peach Fuzz for the second ice cream scoop on each of the cones. And then for that single cone that's in the middle, I'm going to switch over to Mint ink and blend that onto that cone. Now I'm switching to stencil number 3, and for this I'm going to go over my cones with a little bit of Lemon Whip ink. I want these to have a slightly yellow undertone, and once I have a layer of that Lemon Whip down, I'm going to bring in dough ink and blend over the top of that so you'll see that yellow kind of peeking through. Once I have my cones blended, then I am going to blend the windshield of my ice cream truck, and I'm going to use Ocean Breeze ink for that. Now for my final stencil, I really wanted to add some shine to my ice cream truck. So I'm blending the ice cream and the little bib on the side first, and then I'm removing my stencil and I'm going to place some anti-static powder tool over my entire ice cream truck. And that's because for the details on this layer of my stencil for that ice cream truck, I'm going to pounce in with an ink dauber, some Versamark ink, and that's going to allow me to add some embossing powder to these areas. I thought it would be really fun to have some silver embossing powder for the center of the tires, as well as the little kind of serving shelf on the side of the ice cream truck. So I have that Versamark ink blended on there, and then I'm carefully removing this from my grip mat. Now I'm going to sprinkle on some sterling embossing powder. This is an embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. And I'm trying to concentrate the sprinkling of the embossing powder just into the areas that I need it so that I don't risk embossing powder sticking to the areas of my ice cream truck that I've just ink blended, because that ink may still be a little bit wet. Once I've sprinkled on my embossing powder, I'm going to funnel it back into the jar, and then I'm going to heat set this. And this is going to give me some really shiny elements using this layering stencil. And keep in mind, you can do this with any layering stencil you may have. You could maybe add some gold centers to the centers of florals, or add some silver accents here and there as well. I think it's just a fun way to use layering stencils, and sometimes we forget that we can do things like this. You can also use some glitter paste or something like that through your layering stencils to add a little bit of shine. So once that's heat set, you can see I have my shiny elements of my truck, and now I'm ready to die cut my images. This one-piece die will die cut my little bear and all those ice cream cones, as well as my ice cream truck, in one pass of the die cut machine. And I love that it actually knocks out the windows of the ice cream truck. And when I realized that this is how this die operates, I thought I have to make my ice cream truck a shaker ice cream truck. So I'm going to do that here. But before I do that, I'm going to actually add an additional layer of this ice cream truck to the back of my ink blended piece. This is just going to give this a little bit of dimension and a little bit of sturdiness on my card front. And I'm using the Pinkfresh Studio liquid glue that I've placed into a fine tip bottle. Once I have those two die cut layers stacked on top of each other, then I can flip this over, and I'm going to add some liquid glue around the back side of these open windows. That's going to allow me to place a small acetate piece and create my shaker window. You can see I just have a scrap of acetate here. I'm going to use that liquid glue and add a fine bead of liquid glue around the window. You don't want to add too much, because then you can actually have the glue kind of squish onto the acetate that you will see from the front side of the card. So just keep in mind that you want to use that liquid glue sparingly. Once that's in place, I flipped this back over and I added my bear with a little bit of foam adhesive on the back. You can see I'm using my reverse grip tweezers, that is so hard to say, to place my bear and to keep my fingers out of the way. And then I placed another ice cream cone in that hand that's kind of dangling down. This ice cream truck also has a couple of little brackets on the top of it. And I added some liquid glue to the backside and added that large ice cream cone to the top of my ice cream truck. And now that I have all of my pieces in place, I can flip this over and use some foam adhesive to build my shaker well. So when you're building a shaker card, you want to make sure that the foam adhesive surrounding your shaker window is all touching. So you're going to notice that I'm going to butt this strip of foam adhesive right up against the foam adhesive that I've already laid down to make sure that there are no gaps in between those strips of foam adhesive. If there are gaps, your shaker guts or your little bits and confetti can actually sneak out of those openings, and you don't want that. Now I have a piece of white cardstock. I've just trimmed it down. You can see it's just a scrap here. And I'm going to blend some Ocean Breeze ink over this entire thing. This is going to be the backer for my shaker window. And I want it to have a little bit of color on it so that you can see the sparkly bits in it a little bit better, but also it's going to tie into the windshield that I ink blended earlier with my ice cream truck stencils. So I'm just quickly adding a layer of that Ocean Breeze. I'm not being very careful about making sure it's a smooth blend, where it's more about just adding color. And once I have that down, I grabbed some Pinkfresh Studio sequins. Now these were a part of a promotion earlier this year, but they were also some swag for the Pinkfresh Studio virtual events. And so I'm just grabbing those. These are some multicolored stars, and I'm shaking them into the opening or that well that I've created for my shaker window. Once I have those little sparkly bits inside of the shaker window, I'm going to remove the foam adhesive surrounding that window, and then I'm going to place that ink blended backer right on top of that foam adhesive with the blue side facing my work surface so that you'll see that through the shaker window. Also, can we just take a moment to acknowledge how many times I've said shaker window in this video? So I'm pressing that down, and when I flip this over, I have the most adorable ice cream truck. It's a little shaker card, and I think this is such a fun way to use the stamp and die set. I heat embossed a sentiment from that ice cream truck stamp set in silver embossing powder onto some Seaside cardstock. And now I'm using that same Seaside cardstock and the petal grid press plate with my Better Press system to create some background, or actually I'm going to trim this down and create some layers with this. So I'm holding my cardstock in place with some repositionable craft tape, and I'm inking up my press plate with some Versamark ink. This is going to give me a tone-on-tone effect, and yes, you can definitely use Versamark ink on your press plates, especially if you don't have the right ink that kind of coordinates with your cardstock. So once that's inked up, I'm going to add that clear plate to the magnetic feet of the Better Press system and run that through my die cut machine. And you can see I have that beautiful pattern. It's tone on tone pressed onto my cardstock. Now I'm going to use the Starry Scallop coordinating die, and I'm going to die cut this. Now I actually had to repress this because my scallops were a little too close to the edge of the cardstock. So I got some like straight edges on these scallops, so I had to repress it. But now I'm going to take this background and I'm going to trim little pieces of it, strips of it. You don't have to use this over the entire background. In fact, I think trimming this down is a really fun way to use this background, and I think this will look great in foil as well. So once I've trimmed down a few strips of those starry scallops with that petal grid press plate, I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back and add this to the front of an A2 size horizontal card base. Isn't that such a fun little kind of accessory on my card? Then I'm going to take my ice cream truck. It already has foam adhesive on the back, so I just removed the backers and placed that onto the card front. Once my truck is in place, then I can position the wheels. Now those are actually added on separately from the truck itself. They are not attached to the truck. So I added some foam adhesive to the back of those and just nestled them into the wheel wells. You might find it helpful to grab your reverse grip tweezers for this process because they can be a little on the smaller side and you want to make sure you get them positioned properly. Now for this large ice cream on the top of my truck, I actually grabbed some Stencils glitter glue. I know this is an oldie but goodie product. Sometimes we forget about these products that are in our stash, but I love a little glitter on an ice cream cone, especially when it gives it that sparkly, icy look. I added my sentiment onto my card front using some foam adhesive, and then I nestled in a little pink heart. I thought this was just a fun way to finish off this card. And that finishes off card number 1, featuring the brand new ice cream truck stamps, dies, and coordinating stencils from Pinkfresh Studio. I think this is a fun way to use this product suite, but let's take it down a notch. I know normally we take it up a notch, but let's create a simple card using this same product suite. So for card number 2, I'm stamping that little one-piece stamp set again. Really, I just want that large ice cream cone at the bottom, so I'm stamping that in gathered twigs. And then I stenciled it using the same ink colors as I did before and die cut it using the coordinating die. I'm going to attach that ice cream to another strip of that starry scallop background that I created. And then I stamped a sentiment using some pink ink onto some pink cardstock. I just trimmed that into an angle at the end and added that on with foam adhesive as well. Now I have a vellum circle that I die cut using the double stitched circles essential dies from Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm adding this little grouping onto that vellum circle using some foam adhesive. Then I can take this entire little grouping here that I've created. It's so simple and so easy, and I'm going to add this to an ivory card base. Once I have this in place on my card base using some foam adhesive, I'm going to add some finishing touches. So again, to kind of harken back to the first card, I'm adding some Stencils glitter glue to my ice cream scoops, just kind of on that left-hand side. I'm squeezing out a little bit and then just spreading it out with the nozzle of the Stencils glitter glue bottle. And then I tucked in a little heart here near the sentiment. And then I added a few of those sparkly sequin stars that I used in my first card. But this didn't quite feel right. So I trimmed down that ivory card base into a card front and I layered a layer of pink cardstock behind this. You can see I'm just adding this on with some tape runner adhesive. I know it is so unlike me to skip some foam adhesive, but adding that layer of pink cardstock and trimming down that ivory cardstock really made this card feel complete. And you can see all of the sparkle and shine from those shiny little stars and the Stencils glitter glue on this very simple card using that very same product suite. Here's a look at the 2 finished cards featuring the brand new ice cream truck, stamps, dies, and coordinating stencils, as well as that petal grid press plate and the starry scallops background die. I think these turned out so cute. I love this new look from Pinkfresh Studio. The entire release is full of these fun little critters and some yummy treats that I think you're gonna love. So be sure you check out the YouTube description below because I will have links to the featured products used in these projects there, as well as a link to the entire brand new release from Pinkfresh Studio. And trust me, you're gonna wanna check this out. Also in the YouTube description, I will have a link over to my blog and you'll want to head over there today because over on my blog, I am celebrating with a blog hop along with some friends from Pinkfresh Studio. There is more inspiration from this release as well as prizes over there. So you'll find a link to that blog post in the YouTube description below. As always, I want to say thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed these projects and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of my paper crafting and card making video tutorials, as well as my Carissa Crafts live stream broadcasts that happen here on YouTube at least once a week. So you'll want to get those notifications. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.